Then the indictment went on to discuss the infamous freak-offs. Now, we talked about this when we first talked about the Cassie lawsuit. The infamous freak-offs, right? That's what Sean Combs called these weird-ass orgy, forced, like, weird-ass orgy parties that he would be throwing. And it's so crazy, right? Like, P. Diddy was notorious back in the day. He was known as, like, the party guy. Everybody wanted to go to a Diddy party. Everybody wanted to go to a Diddy party. He was known for throwing these amazing parties. Little did we freaking know. Little did we know. And it's so funny because like these stories started trickling out over the years, and you would see these interviews of people being like, yeah, I went to a Diddy party and da 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 da. And then like I went to like the back room. I managed to like get into the back room somehow, and like I get in there and it's a whole other vibe. This dude's sitting on Diddy's laps, he's sitting on dude's lap, like, and that's how they tell you, right? Like, not euphemistically, but they're only going to tell you like little things like, oh, there was dudes sitting on Diddy's lap. He asked me if I wanted to have a drink and it was suspicious, like things like that. But like, it is just so wild to think that this has been going on for so long, and Diddy's not the only one. We know that, right? And he's not the one that invented these freak-offs. I promise you that, okay? I promise you that. Here's what they had to say about the freak-offs. Quote, Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Combs then used threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, quote, freak-offs, end quote. Did you catch that word? Extended sex acts, extended. There's a reason they use that word, and we're going to find out about it as we continue going through this indictment. But keep that in mind. It's not just like depraved. It's not extended. We'll come back to that. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. That's those trafficking charges. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial workers. And after freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use, end quote. So when they use that word extended, now we know what they're talking about. Some of these freak-offs would last days. Someone said that Diddy once had a 5-day party on a private jet. Holy shit. I don't quote me on that. Go look it up. 4 days. And let me say this much. Have I been on a bender before? Yes, I've been on benders before, and they're fun, okay? Partying for like 24 hours straight? Yes. I love it. I've done it before, and I don't know if I'll ever do it again, but I've done it before. And a bender is like, listen, I suggest anybody who's down for that life should have at least 2 or 3 benders in your life. Go on a bender. It's fun. It's cool. It's different. But days and days, 2 days max, baby. And when I say 2 days, I'm talking like 36 hours, not even a full 48. These fools were engaging in sex acts, these freak offs, for days at a time. High off drugs and doing so much wild shit and so many drugs that at the end of it, they would need IVs administered in order to recuperate. Just let that sink in. And what makes it so extra wild is the fact that a lot of these participants were not willing participants. Even some of the sex workers who were paid to be there have complained that they were forced into doing things that they did not agree to do. Even the paid sex workers were being forced to do things they didn't want to do for days on end. Now, with the IV thing, listen, it is crazy because it sounds crazy because it is crazy. Like, that's a fact, right? But, listen, this is LA. IVs after a hard night of partying is not an uncommon thing. I've never had one. I'm not saying I wouldn't if I ever had the opportunity. So it is a thing. It's known to be a thing. Like, there are services out here where you can call, registered nurses to make house calls and come and administer IV fluids to you to bring you back to life after partying. So, this is a thing. You'll see that at Coachella, you'll see it at the festivals. I don't want to, it's a thing. So, I don't want, I want to put it into context to not make it seem like it's just so out there and outlandish. It is a thing, but it's also like, damn, yo. It's also like, when you put it into the context of what this whole thing is about, it's like, shit. Y'all needed IVs after extended freak offs.